Hello, and welcome to the HP TV podcast, where we talk about everything to do with the Harry Potter TV show that doesn't quite exist yet. I'm Mitchell, here along with Jamie and Steven, ready to deep dive into every element of Harry Potter as we look forward to the HBO Max show. Please find us online at HPTV Pod on your favorite social media platform, or email us at hptvpod@gmail.com. Steven, Jamie, what's going on with Harry Potter in your lives this week? We don't have any other lives. It's only the occurrences of Harry Potter.
Only Harry Potter. We read chapters 3 through 5 of the first book with our kiddos. So, well, Mitchell, I don't know if he read with his kid, but
Yep. My 9-week-old is loving it.
that's like the most Harry Potter happenings, I guess, this week for me.
Well, we got some news right, I think the day after we recorded last week.
Yeah.
Which was
We're
a
like,
pain.
there's no new news. And then, of course.
But again, if you're on the socials, had a very vibrant chat. Now, look, every Harry Potter chat, let's be honest, kind of people start to get angry about J.K. Rowling and Snape. But in there was good discussion about what a freaking awesome cast this is. And some people, I'm like, ooh, I don't know how Keira Knightley's going to sound as Umbridge. But they got huge names to do this. And you think these people probably went in for 2 days of recording, probably getting paid really well because it's Audible, owned by Amazon. And it's like, yeah, it's a star-studded cast. And it makes you think the TV show, why didn't anyone want to commit for 10 years? Come on. It is a slightly lower commitment, but yeah, it was a pretty big drop.
When we first talked about casting, was this idea though, right? Is like the lower the commitment, the bigger the stars you can get, right? So I'm still hopeful that as it moves along, right, and you can get those folks who show up for, half of the book or something like that, that we'll be able to get some big names in there. But there's some really cool names in there. And it's a nice long list now too of all the casting.
All right. Let's read a quick. Jamie, do you want to run down the list and then we'll each kind of pick a favorite here?
I'm going to try to get all the names right. So what they just announced last week, we have Kit Harington as Lockhart.
Jon Snow. Sorry.
Keira Knightley as Umbridge. Ruth Wilson is Bellatrix. I'm sorry, I'm going to say this wrong. Ambika Maud as Tonks. Leo Woodall as Bill Weasley. Simon Pegg as Mr. Weasley. James McAvoy as Mad-Eye Moody. And Gemma Whelan as Sprout. And then A1 Rion as Professor Lupin, aka Dog Redemption Story. Oh, sorry. And then Matt Berry is going to be Sir Cadogan. And I don't know if we ever talked about, no, we did talk a little bit on the Hagrid episode that Mark Eddy's going to be Hagrid. And then Daniel Mays as Dobby. I think those were the last batch that got announced, but we didn't really discuss that too much. Those guys were in there.
No, I think there's some real exciting names in there. I think it's going to be really cool to hear James McAvoy as Mad-Eye Moody. There's some people talking about, like, I hope he does the series itself. And I don't know about that happening, but I think he could be awesome at it. It'll be interesting to see how much they sound like themselves, though. Like, are we going to just see, the younger Professor X in our minds the whole time while listening to him play Mad-Eye Moody?
He should be the student gatherer. To what Steven was saying earlier, I do think we all thought a lot of big people weren't doing the show because of the controversy. They didn't want the backlash. And maybe they thought doing this, there would be less of that. And overall, this is a way less time commitment. But I don't know. I'm a little jealous of this cast. And I'm a little getting more and more disappointed by the HBO series cast.
No, we said, now I know we wanted maybe a star or two for the HBO cast, but I think those adult roles that are going to be like these solid British character actors, and maybe this is what launches them into something. I think that's overall a good choice. I think, yeah, we could have had one or two. I think Voldemort will be a bigger name, but this cast is stacked. And like you said, low commitment. I had said, oh, maybe if you're like McGonagall, it's a few days recording. And I was thinking Matt Berry for Sir Cadogan, how much is he getting paid to come in for 2 hours?
I know. And we posted about this on TikTok, and a lot of people were confused. And we tried to put in the lettering, this is the Audible cast. Like, people were like, what? Why would Keira Knightley be playing Umbridge? And it's like, no. I'm glad the show didn't do that. I'm glad they didn't throw in like a big celebrity that didn't really look the part just to have that big celebrity. Although we already have people that don't look the part, but we're not getting back into that. But I'm really just jealous of Hugh Laurie. Why isn't Hugh Laurie the show's Dumbledore if he is willing to be Dumbledore? I don't know. But there's a lot of cool people, and I do hope some of these people could be in the show still. We have plenty of roles in future seasons that need to be
Hey,
filled.
maybe Hugh Laurie will like it so much that he'll take over when Lithgow dies because he's so freaking. Oh,
Steven's just waiting for poor John Lithgow to die.
it sounds terrible, but when it happens, I'm gonna be like, I told you so. I told you. Casting
But
should
I feel
listen.
like I don't know, when they said they were doing this full cast, I was like, oh, okay. Like Jim Dale, always number one in my heart, and it will always be. But I was like so about it. But now I'm more excited about it than the show. But also because I'm gonna get it a lot sooner. It's coming in a couple of months. I don't have to wait another year and a half or so.
Yeah, I just got 3 months of Audible at 50% off. So, and it's cheaper here, I think. I think that makes it only £5 a month. So
Oh,
I know what I'm doing.
I'm gonna move
There
to
you go.
England to get Audible cheaper.
We'll just use Mitchell's address. How do we make that happen? I don't know.
Is there anyone in there that you think, okay, this person, even if we know that they're not, you're like, ooh, that would have been a good live action casting besides you, Laurie? Maybe let Steven answer this one. Or is there someone that just stands out as like, oh, that could sound really cool?
As far as voices go, I don't know that anyone like has a. I don't know that anyone has like a very distinctive voice. I don't like. I think that they're all really good actors. I do think, like I was saying, that I think that James McAvoy would actually be pretty cool live action if he would actually do Mad Eye for the series. In part because
Is
I
he a
kind
little
of.
too young?
I mean, they can age him up. They can do things with makeup. They also got to give
Makeup?
him like a big fake eye and a peg leg
Cut
and
off
stuff like
his
that.
nose. No nose.
Yeah. So I
You know
think that they
who
could make it happen.
I would actually switch is Kit Harington could go ginger and be Bill Weasley. And Leo Woodall, who was in that viral Netflix show One Day, and he was in the latest Bridget Jones film. He looks like a very attractive dummy. I wonder if he could have been Gilderoy Lockhart. I would have swapped those two around.
I do think Kit Harington's voice is an interesting pick for Gilderoy. And I don't know if just because I have Jim Dale in my head, but like you don't just get that like smugness from him, but I'm sure they'll do it. And I know a lot of people outside of Keira Knightley not having Umbridge looks, a lot of people think that's weird. I'm like, I could totally see her doing that voice.
Yeah.
Like I think that will be interesting. But no, like it's all gonna be by the voices. So I'm interested to see how much people change their voices or if they just use like, I'm a celebrity, here's my voice.
I hope they change it. Like, obviously, Kit, maybe he just has that where we'll really recognize his voice, but he'll do it in such a smarmy, smug way that it'll just work. Like Simon Pegg as Arthur Weasley, that one rings really easy to me. James McAvoy, I do think he's going to have to gruff it up a little bit, but very realistic. I'm excited to see what they sound like.
Well, did you guys see him in his Dark Materials?
No.
I
I
didn't
watched
see
part
that.
of the first season.
I did watch
That
that
series-
creepy movie.
I don't know which
Oh,
one.
the one
but
where he has multiple personalities?
Mm-hmm. I think he could do this.
Oh,
pretty
that one
well.
is crazy. So yeah, but I mean, he wasn't necessarily like grizzled like Mad Eye Moody, but it was more of like a. I don't know. I feel like the tone works and stuff. So I think he could do it. It's gonna be cool.
But I think
And-
Kit would have been a great Sirius. And I think he still
Yeah.
could be. HBO.
Live
Do it,
action.
HBO. Make it happen.
Also shout Ruth Wilson as Bellatrix is
Yeah.
low key. I think she's going to do fantastic. I think she's someone who, like, her voice is the right amount of unknown.
And also can look the part for the live action.
Please, indeed.
You
There's
know what I always thought about Bellatrix though is like I feel like Jim Dale and then the movie. I feel like they leaned a little too much into the French of her does she have like her French
well,
accent?
they did in the beginning, and then like Jim Dale backs off of it. Like she sounds completely different in her prison scene in Goblet than she does in in the Order of the Phoenix.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. I think it was interesting that they like leaned into that because I don't understand anything about it. I don't know her story that would make her sound French because isn't the name Lestrange is French, but then like that's her husband's name. That's
But
not
yeah,
hers.
when we look at the background of the character, actually, they've been in Britain since Fantastic Beasts. So, there has not been really any other TV show news. Casey Bloys did come out today and kind of give a timeline of their big tentpole properties. So in January of 26 is when the Game of Thrones Hedge Knight spinoff is coming out. Early summer is when the House of the Dragon's coming out, and then 2027 he earmarked for Harry Potter. So he kind of spread it out, was just showing like, here's when our big series. And I think he also mentioned that show about teenagers where they do a lot of drugs. I can't remember the name of it.
Euphoria?
Euphoria, nailed it. What up, Zendaya? Anyway, but there has been a rumor that's been persisted, and I think that this is just like one fan idea that went a little viral. So now all the dumb fake blogs are picking it up, and it's that there's a Founder series in the work featuring Henry Cavill as Godric Gryffindor and Tom Hiddleston as Salazar Slytherin. The problem is Loki is too similar to Salazar, or not too similar because Salazar is probably a bit more evil, but it's just fits too well. It's almost too much of a fan cast. And we've kind of said that they're not going to greenlight a spinoff. Maybe they're allowing some writers to speculate, but there's no, like Game of Thrones had like 40 scripts in the works. I don't think there's any way they even entertain production on this until they know that the first series is going to work.
My thought was that what happened is it was a pitch. Someone came in and pitched this as like, hey, let's follow this up. If Harry Potter does well, we could follow this up. And then, when you do a pitch to executives, you throw in names. You're like, imagine a Henry Cavill, but like things like that. So maybe that got leaked somehow, but I just don't see this was being talked about when they very first started shooting this. I'm like, I don't think they're going to talk about a spinoff until they at least know production's going well and executives are liking what they're seeing from footage, which maybe that's just now starting to happen. Hopefully that's happening, but you don't really know until it's like edited and ready to go. Like,
and this would be a wild swing to do like a pre-medieval period piece about people founding the school. Like, now there's tons of creative room because we don't know almost anything about them, and you still keep the Hogwarts factor, but I would be surprised if that's the first spinoff that they do.
unless you play
The
Legacy.
benefit, they could reuse all the House of the Dragon sets for their medieval, shoot there. I
That's
think it'd be
true.
great.
It's
Save
true.
themselves
like
some money.
That's actually why. Well, okay, and then in other big news, Paramount is buying out Warner Brothers, right?
Well, that is the rumor, and I'm of two minds on this. I think it's overall a bad thing, but I don't know if it's big enough for antitrust to stop it. Obviously, Zaslav is he's the guy who's been running Warner Brothers, and then you have David Ellison, who he runs Skydance. This is over the head of most people. It's very industry talk, but they just bought Paramount, which includes CBS, Paramount Plus, everything to do with that. Nickelodeon, MTV, Comedy Central, for example. Now, if these two giant legendary studios in Warner Brothers and Paramount as like theatrical studios combined, I could see that triggering antitrust. But then you look at the broader spectrum of how many streaming platforms we have, and that would combine HBO Max and Paramount Plus. And a lot of, but I can't see them combining unless they are one company. Like, would they just merge their libraries? I don't think that would be possible because these streaming platforms are now the tentpoles. I always thought Peacock and Paramount would merge, but then I'm like, can Comcast buy Warner Brothers? I don't think that works either. So from an antitrust perspective, maybe Donald Trump, who does get to approve it, not to talk politics, he just gets, the president has a lot of say in whether these get approved and if they're monopoly issues or not. But that would change things quite drastically if you have this billionaire who's kind of trying to revitalize the Paramount brand, now owning Harry Potter, Game of Thrones, HBO, and every HBO property. That's pretty wild.
Well, it's not that wild when you look right now what just happened with Disney owns Fox now.
Yeah.
So their catalog is huge. I don't love monopolies. I wouldn't love two companies just owning everything. But in the scheme of like streaming, it's getting ridiculous. Let's combine some of these together. Paramount Plus, I actually watch the most, which is kind of funny.
What do you watch on Paramount Plus besides Survivor?
Survivor, Cheers, Frasier. I'm still watching shows from whatever.
Every Star Trek.
Every Star Trek. So I'm still living in the 90s, people. And 80s, apparently. But I'm all for that. And I don't think Paramount Plus is going to be able to stand on its own for much longer. It's still like
there's not enough Trekkies out there.
Yeah.
It's kind of
but not even that. They've tried to do original shows and stuff, and they're all kind of falling apart. But I don't know.
Those size-wise, because you got like Comcast, right, which has Universal, and there's a ton of stuff there. And then you've got Disney. So I wonder where that would line up if you were to take, Warner Brothers and Paramount, like how those three measure up to each other. Because if there's three large ones, I don't think they have the antitrust issues that they'd be worried about.
If you think about it, now we also have Netflix and Amazon players. So you have Netflix, Amazon, Disney, Comcast, and then potentially you would have Warner Brothers mixed now with Paramount. Now you also have Apple, who's just has so much money that they have to be considered a player, even though their library is tiny. They could buy out the Sony library, but like Amazon bought out MGM, like all these niche ones are going. But think about it, that gives you 6 major streaming services, and then you have to have the sports rights are a whole different world. Like,
oh my gosh, give one person the sports rights.
Let's
so
consolidate back
NFL,
into cable.
Go to one.
It's all about the money.
I know it's all about the money, but then we're all spending our money to buy.
You guys hear that song in your head right now?
It's all about the money.
I watch Pitch Perfect way too much.
And if Paramount bought out Warner Brothers, do you think Paramount would be able to release Batgirl? Or do you think that's just gone?
Oh, somebody leak it. Because that Looney Tunes movie that got shuttered, they've now sold it. So let's let Batgirl be found.
Get it out there, man. Well, here's my worry though, is these things happen and like projects that are in development and stuff like just get shut down. So it's kind of like, oh, we merge and we've got all this debt over here and like cancel this, cancel that. And so like it's happened with some really very successful series and movie series of like with Warner Brothers, they just rebooted the DC universe and everything, right? Is that going to be able to keep going?
You're buying Warner Brothers, you got to think Harry Potter, Game of Thrones, DC are essentially the 3 IPs that you're buying it for. So I think you keep James Gunn, you keep all of that rolling as much as possible. And the way that they're kind of talking about spending right now within Paramount makes me think that they're definitely going to be things that get combined and cut down, but I don't think the tent poles would be the things to go.
Do not screw with my Harry Potter TV series. We already have to wait friggin' year and a half for it. Better.
You imagine they've already put too much money into it now. I think if you buy that account, you're giving it a shot.
Apparently, it's just like a tax write-off if they can it. So we'll see. Just kidding.
Just a lot of taxes.
I love that, girl.
Let's move on to our deep dive subject of the day. So we've been rotating people, place, or thing, and we're back to place. And we're kind of going through the book somewhat chronologically. So one of the first magical places, in fact, the first exclusively magical place that we visit in the books is Diagon Alley, which I did not notice says diagonally for a very long time. I want to read what Harry first sees and feels when he enters Diagon Alley, and then we're kind of going to go through how it comes into the actual Harry Potter story and everything we know from the background. So when he first goes in, first of all, Hagrid says, "Welcome," said Hagrid, "to Diagon Alley," and all I can hear is "Welcome to Jurassic Park." Anyway,
music.
He says, yeah. Harry wished he had about 8 more eyes. He turned his head in every direction as they walked up the street, trying to look at everything at once. The shops, the things outside them, the people doing their shopping. A plump woman outside an apothecary was shaking her head as they passed, saying, "Dragon liver, 17 sickles an ounce. They're mad." A low, soft hooting came from a dark shop with a sign saying Ilops Owl Emporium. Tawny, Screech, Barn, Brown, and Snowy. Several boys of about Harry's age had their noses pressed against a window with broomsticks in it. "Look," Harry heard one of them say, "the Nimbus 2001. Oh, no, it's just 2000. Fastest ever." There was a shop selling robes, shop selling telescopes, and strange silver instruments Harry had never seen before. Windows stacked with barrels of bat spleens and eel's eyes, tottering piles of spell books, quills, and rolls of parchment, potion bottles, globes of the moon. And then he sees Gringotts. And yeah, I think that she does a great job at describing the sensory overload of this place with movement, and we'll kind of talk about how it's been interpreted in different ways. But yeah, Diagon, I think I'm very fond of this as a place, because whereas Hogsmeade is like a village, this is shopping street. It's Oxford Street for wizards. It's like the first time Harry gets to see this world in action. Jamie, why don't you start us off just telling us, where is Diagon Alley?
The fictional setting is a magical shopping street in London. It's hidden from Muggle view, and it's behind the Leaky Cauldron. Now, apparently it's canon that the Leaky Cauldron is located on Charing Cross Road. My book does not say that. From what I've searched on the internet, and I even asked ChatGPT, is that there is a version of the book somewhere. People say the Bloomsburg UK first edition, but Mitchell checked his edition, and it does not say this, that it does name the record shop and what I think it's a hamburger shop, whatever it's in between, is on Charing Cross Road. And that it is stated on the harrypotter.com as being on Charing Cross Road. So we know the actual street in London where the Leaky Cauldron is supposed to be.
It's a
And
big
then,
street, by the way. You would not be
yeah, it's
able to
like a,
just pinpoint where this is.
and then you find those shops that could be in between, which are long gone, I'm sure, for if they ever actually existed. And so it's in the alley behind the Leaky Cauldron. I don't know about you guys. When I first read it, I wasn't quite sure if when Hagrid did the spell, if it was like actually existed there in time and space, or if you go through like when I very first read this, like you go through almost like a portal of some sort into the magical world. So some people thought that at first, which I read about, which I thought was interesting because I'm like, I wonder if I did. Like, but it does exist, and that's what we learn about the magical locations throughout London and throughout the world is that like they are there, but there's certain spells and things put on them, so Muggles just can't see them and access them. Which
I
you think
wonder
in
if
tight
that
London, that would be
I wonder if that spell is part of what maybe that hamburger restaurant next door to Leaky Cauldron had a real hard time because people kept getting pushed away.
And now it's a Five Guys. So
Right.
there are so many. This is not a joke. There are so many Five Guys in central London. They are everywhere, and they're
Five Guys is
delicious, but they're so expensive.
they're so expensive
But
here.
it's really good, and they do give you a lot of fries.
In-N-Out and even Freddy's to me have equally good burgers, so I don't think you need to go to Five Guys. Anyway, that's way off topic. But it does say to access it, you have to go through the wall of the Leaky Cauldron, but you can access the Leaky Cauldron via the Flu Network, or you can apparate there. And obviously you can walk there like Harry and Hagrid did.
Do you guys remember that there was like I think it was like a website, and to get into it, you had to tap the bricks in the right order, and I could never get it right.
That sounds vaguely familiar.
Yeah.
Was that one of the
yeah.
games or something? Or maybe Pottermore?
Do you guys remember the tapping order right now?
Oh man, it's 2 down, 3 across.
3 up, 2 across.
Oh, had the
we
right
don't
numbers.
know a ton about it, and in fact there was a Pottermore article about it, and now the main Harry Potter website article is quite basic. But Stephen, I took this from the Harry Potter Wikia, and people say these facts are from different Harry Potter sources, but what have you been able to find about the history of Diagon Alley?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is mixed. A lot of it's hard because a lot of what people remember from different sources, like you said. But it sounds pretty cool to me. So the Leaky Cauldron was around before Charing Cross Road was even there or planned. Its address was number 1 Diagon Alley, and it was believed to have been built sometime in the early 1500s, along with the rest of like the Wizarding Street there. It was a popular historical theory that the second oldest building in Diagon Alley was the Gringotts Wizarding Bank, which is said to have been founded by the Goblins in 1474. So somewhere in the 1500s as well. And the other shops grew up around it. However, there's a possibility that Ollivanders was the oldest building of all because there are records of it dating back to the early 4th century. So we know that Ollivanders have been, serving the Wizarding public for however many years. They started in 382 BC. So if it was in the same location, I think is kind of the logic there that it was the first place. But if you figure you have a few different stores that are possibly pretty distant from each other without the road connecting them yet, it wasn't really a place in and of itself yet. So what really changed Diagon Alley was the Statute of Secrecy. And so when that was imposed, Diagon Alley was hidden with the use of many powerful spells. And the Minister of Magic from that time, which was Ulick Gamp, agreed to give the landlord of the present of that time, the landlord of the Leaky Cauldron got responsibility for letting people into Diagon Alley from his backyard, basically. So after Diagon Alley was hidden from Muggles is actually when it really started to flourish, because with the Statute of Secrecy, wizards couldn't just go wherever and socialize wherever without dressing up like Muggles. So they would go to Diagon Alley, and it became like the central marketplace of Wizarding Britain. In 1926, one of the shops in Diagon Alley was burgled with the help of a 4-headed bird. And in 1932, a Muggle managed to gain access to Diagon Alley through unknown means, which the Daily Prophet reported on. So we know at least one Muggle has made their way in there, and not just the version that we have visited in Orlando.
I hope it's me.
Well, the Grangers were there. Like, that's what I wonder too. Like, if you go with a wizard.
That's true.
I think you might be able to charm them in some way, or like if you lead them into it. It's kind of like how they're just like, oh, Muggles just don't notice. So maybe if they were pointed out to notice.
It's like in the good old
yeah.
days when you could kind of just follow the person in front of you into Costco and they wouldn't ask for your card. But now everyone has to scan the little thing. It's so annoying.
So serious now.
But you also have to scan to check out, so why does whatever.
Um, so check quickly about what we know about the layout of Diagon Alley. There's actually nothing. We don't technically know. In fact, I watched walkthroughs of it from like old PlayStation video games and there was like a little bit of a Pottermore thing that you could do, and like people had screen recorded it, and it doesn't seem like anyone knows. And I've seen these really elaborate maps online, but all the evidence really posted that this is a street. So maybe there's a couple little alleyways off of it, or there's maybe like one circle about, kind of like we see in the theme park. And I do have the theme park map up, where there's essentially one main road and then a couple little cubbies, and then one part that kind of comes around the back of some of the buildings, and then there's of course Nocturne Alley. But I think we're mostly looking like this is one shopping street, one little area, and I think people are wanting to turn it into kind of this little wizarding neighborhood, but I think that would kind of take away from what it's supposed to be. So there's no big square, there's no big, area that we know of, no apartment complex. I also wanted to shout out the places that people consider the real world inspirations. One is Victoria Street in Edinburgh, and then there's a couple courts in London that are kind of like large arcades. So are Goodwin's Court and Cecil Court, which a lot of people will go on their Harry Potter tours to. J.K. Rowling has not verified any of these, but she has turned down the one that looks the coolest, and that is this shopping area in York, which is in North England, called the Shambles. And if you just Google the Shambles York, it is really cool. It is very like odd shaped buildings and overhangs. It looks really cool, but that's the one that she's explicitly said she has never been there. So was not the inspiration for Diagon Alley. But there are these like charming little streets throughout London, so it kind of makes sense where she would have gotten this. And also just to know that Wizards needed their own main shopping area, and they want more areas where they can kind of have it to themselves.
I know in the book, right, we always kind of imagine it as however we can, but then the version of the movie, which is pretty close to the one in the theme parks, has always been the way that I've imagined it. It's a road, but I guess in the theme parks it actually is a through road, because you can go to Jurassic Park or the Lost Continent from Diagon Alley. Yeah. But no, I think when we went to visit London, when we went to visit Mitchell, going through Burroughs Market was actually real. That has really made me think a lot more about like how it's not quite as contained, right? Like there's a lot of places where you're going through open areas and stuff. But just knowing, more or less what that marketplace is kind of like in London, makes me think a lot more about it. So, and again, it'll be interesting to see how they maybe characterize this one different for the TV series.
Yeah, they could go a lot of ways with it. And there are lots of crowded, like little walkway, like maybe there is a little market somewhere in there, but I think some people were kind of crediting it with this big space that I don't think was there. But yeah, there are definitely streets and definitely comparable. Like when they said, "Oh, we want to keep it authentic." No, you were cheap and you wanted to make it small, referring mostly to Hogsmeade, because that is one thing. We'll get to the theme park later because I have thoughts. But let's go to it. Actually plays a factor in our story, because like we talk about these episodes where we want time before Hogwarts. We want to see Harry struggle with the Dursleys. We want to see Uncle Vernon's descent into madness. And then I think it's important that we see Harry's interactions in Diagon Alley. They're his first magical interactions. So when he enters, the first place to go is Gringotts, and we have this whole little adventure of them going to both the vaults, him realizing that he has money, him seeing goblins, like another intelligent magical creature, for the first time. And then they come back out and he goes to get his robes. This is where he meets Draco Malfoy, even though we don't know it's Draco Malfoy yet, which I completely forgot. And he gets to see magic in action. He just talks about the tape measure measuring him, even though it's not touching. Actually, he might talk about that in Ollivanders. I digress. But yeah, so we kind of have these three main sections. He gets an ice cream, important to mention. He goes into Flourish and Blotts quickly and describes how magical it is. And then the last big one, of course, is he gets his wand at Ollivanders. And that is like this intense experience where he learns more about Voldemort, and he meets this quirky guy and he feels magic come from him for the very first time. So Diagon Alley is like, for Harry, who just woke up in that shabby cabin in the water, or shack, to then see this, like, I love when he wakes up in the shack and he's like thinking it's all a dream. Like,
Mhm.
I don't know how he could go back to Privet Drive after visiting Diagon Alley and wake up in the morning. I would check my trunk. I would be like, is it all still there? Is it real? Did you guys have any thoughts on Harry's first visit? The first time we get to experience Diagon Alley in the Sorcerer's Philosopher's Stones.
It's our first step into the magical world because up until this point, we only hear about from Hagrid, like literally right before. And so that's what's really exciting about it. And I think overall, I did imagine it like lighter and brighter, more than what we see in the movies. And then I don't know, I get the realistic kind of take on it, but yeah, I remember being excited because as a kid, you're like, I'm excited to see all this magic, and it's like boom right there in your face. And for Harry, that had to be like awesome and overwhelming.
Yeah, and a few chapters really builds up to it, and you go from this misery to this all happening so quickly. In the Chamber of Secrets, Harry returns to do his school shopping, and in this case, he's been dealing with the madness of Dobby and everything, and he goes to the Burrow, so he gets to go with his friends, and he gets to meet up with Hermione, and I think that's a really fun moment. Of course, he accidentally goes first to Nocturne Alley, um, which I don't know how much you want to go in, but it's essentially the evil twin or smaller little brother, and Harry gets to go to Borgin and Burke's, which is kind of feels like this classic evil shop, and he runs into Hagrid there getting flesh-eating slug repellent.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's why Harry's there.
And Harry gets led back in. It's funny because then he emerges in Diagon Alley and it feels like, oh, like I'm back to the light. But the main set piece here is in Flourish and Blots. And I think if anyone who loves books, like I love a bookstore, it makes me want
Yeah.
to spend all my money on books. And then I'm like, wow, books are expensive and they're heavy and I don't have anywhere to put them. But I like going into a bookstore. And the UK still has two major three really big chains, whereas the US has kind of gone down from Borders and a few others to now it's just really Barnes and Noble. But I think then having the magic of it, and there happens to be a book signing where we get to meet this character Gilderoy Lockhart and his new book Magical Me, and then we get the fisticuffs between Arthur Weasley and Lucius Malfoy. Like, it is quite an eventful second visit to Diagon Alley. But after Harry had kind of this miserable summer, we get to meet the Burrow, which is like really wonderful and heartwarming in its own. And then Harry gets to go with his friends. And I don't want to jump ahead, but just knowing Harry has like feels at home here, he's back in his magical element. When you start these books at home at the Dursleys, and it's a little bit of misery, and then Diagon Alley is always one of his first stops to get back into the magical world. I will let Steven talk about the next couple books.
Yes, yes. Well, so in Prisoner of Azkaban, this one I think is really cool because before we've gotten these tastes of Diagon Alley, right? And just like spending time in the magical world has always been centered in Hogwarts, right? That's where Harry sleeps and eats and, lives his life. And so this is the first time where Harry is in a magical place on his own, being able to do what he wants to do, having the freedom to roam around Diagon Alley. I mean, it happens to be because he blew up his aunt, which, may not be the best reason to get a nice little vacation. But he runs away from Privet Drive. He's picked up by the night bus, and he gets dropped off at a leaky cauldron by the Minister of Magic, no less. And basically told like, hey, you're free to hang out here until school starts in like 3 weeks, I think it is, that he spends in there. And so he gets to just live there. And so this is very strange new freedom to Harry, right? Like it took him several days to get used to it says in the book. But he got to wake up when he wanted to. He'd go to sleep when he wanted to. He could eat whatever he wanted, go wherever he wanted. He had money to spend, right? Because he went to Gringotts and just took out as much as he wanted. And because he's loaded, he was able to just do whatever he wanted. It is funny that it specifies that he had to learn restraint and not just buy everything under the sun, which I think is an important lesson to learn at the age of 13. But some of the best bits from that part of the book 3 are just people watching. He gets to see kind of how the other wizards act and react, and some of the gadgets that are shown. There's a lunoscope that the one wizard shows to another. And then another really important piece in this book is that he learns more about Sirius Black, which he kind of got a preview of on the night bus, but now he gets to get a sense of like how scared people really are of Sirius. And so it's kind of, to a degree, has this kind of cloud over Diagon Alley. Everybody a little worried about what he might do, or where he might show up. some really key moments is eating ice cream at Florian Fortescue's, which actually has pretty good ice cream from, my being there. He gets to see the firebolt in Quality Quidditch Supplies, which is nice little foreshadowing. And then he notes that the price listed there is price on request, which means too freaking much. So he does not spend his riches on one of those. Yeah.
Do we ever find out how much it is? Because Harry was pretty
I don't
rich. I know
think
he said,
so.
"Oh, it's got to last me all these years till I work," but I'm like, how much is the best broomstick? Thousands
And
of
Sirius
galleons?
got it for him because Sirius is also loaded too, which brings up a whole other thing of how Sirius was getting money out of his bank when he was on the run. But
I know him and James were
we
just
digress.
spoiled, stupid boys, douchebags the whole time.
They were. But some other key moments, fighting the firebolt, the Monster Book of Monsters, Savage Books tearing each other apart and things. I laughed really hard at this one the first time I read it when the manager was so relieved that Harry didn't need that book because he already had one.
Oh, Hagrid.
One thing that I was a little troubled by to remember is the talking mirror in Harry's room at the Leaky Cauldron.
Oh yeah,
because he's fixing his hair, and so the mirror is like, I think you're fighting a losing battle there. But like, if she can see him fixing his hair, what else could she see? Like, make sure you're being careful when you change hair. You might have a pervy mirror there watching you. Or what if it's a spell and it's somebody else like in the other room? People are crazy.
It always reminded me of the wardrobe from Beauty and the Beast.
I know, and then that makes me think of Emma Watson and Beauty and the Beast, but whatever.
Wasn't there wardrobe? Wasn't there like a little nightstand too, though, with a mirror that had eyes and stuff at the top? That's how I imagined it. But anyway, pervy mirror, possibly, a Moaning Myrtle-esque type of character there. And another cool thing is that he gets to run into most of his classmates before school ever starts. So for him, that he gets to go spend, half a day or whatever in Diagon Alley, get all his stuff, and then doesn't see no one until school. And this time he got to see, Dean and Seamus when they showed up, and then Neville a few days later. And on the very last day is when Ron and Hermione show up. And so he was starting to worry he was never going to get to see them. And then there they were, and they came together. When they get there, they go to the magical menagerie together, and he gets to see some of the cool animals that are out there, some different pets. And Hermione buys Crookshanks, of course, which is important in book 3. And then the last thing that happens on that trip is just dinner with the Weasleys. So again, this is Harry. He's had dinner at the Weasleys' house, but like going out with the family, feeling like part of a bigger group. And then, learning of how concerned the Weasley parents were about his safety, right? That's where he learns about Sirius Black and all of his intentions to, try and kill Harry, which turns out to not trouble him that much, which is weird to think about. And so tons of stuff in Prisoner of Azkaban about what happened in Diagon Alley. Really, for Harry, it is just like it's freedom, right? He's already had this as this portal into the magical world. Diagon Alley, in a lot of ways, also just represents the magical world in itself, right? It's kind of hidden underneath or behind the Muggle world. And so it just kind of always makes you wonder, like, where else are these little pockets of places where you would never expect to find, a bunch of wizards hiding or selling stuff. Goblet of Fire actually does not include Diagon Alley. They do not go there. Mrs. Weasley goes to Diagon Alley herself, by herself, while they are at the World Cup. And so she just picks everything up for them, which is, Instacart before it was Instacart and whatever other service you want to do shopping through.
I think I said this when we did the movie rewatches, but I'm mad they cut so much out for the movie because that's like one of my favorite parts of the books. Like, I think as a kid, you're like, so cool that Harry gets to like live there and he gets to like immerse himself in the magical world, not just Hogwarts, like the real magical world. Yeah.
He gets to spend time.
Those movies when we were kids, like Blank Check or Richie Rich or those movies where kids just get to go and have a grand old time without adults getting in the way. That would be
a cool thing to see. And this is something we'll talk about at the end, like things that should maybe be expanded on or be in that weren't in, but like that would be something to maybe spend some time and see one of his other classmates come and have some time with Harry. But Jamie, what happens now here in books 6 and 7?
In book 5, again, Mrs. Weasley mentions going to Diagon Alley to get his supplies and stuff. And it is, I don't know if it's directly mentioned, but we know that once the Weasley twins leave Hogwarts, they do run off there to open their Weasley's Wizard Wheezes. So like that starts developing, even though we don't see it. It's off screen. But in 6, so First, we hear about things going on in Diagon Alley, and it's really through Bill and Lupin and Arthur kind of having a conversation that Harry is part of. They basically talk about how first it's been mentioned that Florian Fortescue, his shop is empty, and that Bill just says he was dragged off by the looks of his place. So it's not confirmed that he was taken by Death Eaters, but it's alluded to. And then Arthur says something really similar about Ollivander. He says, looks like Ollivander's gone too. Shop's empty. No sign of a struggle. No one knows whether he left voluntarily or was kidnapped. And we find out later that he was taken by Voldemort. So when we do finally get to Diagon Alley, it is really a reflection of what's going on in the world. So Harry arrives by ministry car because they want to make sure he has security. And then they talk about that there's going to be more security waiting for him at the Leaky Cauldron. And when he shows up there, it's Hagrid, which is exciting because Harry thought it was just going to be a bunch of horrors, but he's really excited to see Hagrid. And then the Leaky Cauldron, for the first time in Harry's memory, is completely empty. So it's just Tom, and Tom's like disappointed when they just kind of are using it to walk through because I'm sure it's affecting his business, his income, all that, because no one wants to be out and about right now because Death Eaters are everywhere and everyone knows that Voldemort is out and doing evil things. And so in the book, it says that it looks completely different from the cheerful streets of the earlier books. The windows are shuttered or covered with ministry security notices. Some shops are closed, and a fear hangs in the air. And it feels like Nocturne Alley is almost spilling over into the main street of Diagon Alley. Harry goes to Madame Malkin's, and he sees Draco, and they exchange insults, and he insults Hermione and Jenny. And at one point, Madame Malcolm like grabs his arm to adjust his sleeve, and Draco cries out in pain, which is Harry's first signal that Draco is actually has actually become a Death Eater. The fun part of this sounds really dreary, is that Weasley's Wizard Wheezes is open, and this is Harry's first time seeing the shop. So it's just like this bright and colorful shop when all this dreariness is going on, and it's kind of like a beautiful reflection of the twins, how they've been throughout the whole series, is they kind of make light of things that are really serious, like joking that Harry is, Slytherin's heir and all that stuff earlier in books. And they are selling all sorts of things, and they get to go explore the shop, and Fred and George are having a lot of success compared to the rest of the shops. And they're also selling things to help people fight against the Death Eaters and stuff, like the darkness powder and things like that. So they're kind of
The
taking the
decoy
opportunity
detonators.
to
They
which
have like
some of
the
that
shield
stuff.
hats, right?
And at some point, the bad guys actually use some of the
Yeah.
Malfoy stuff or something, and they're like, "Oh, I'm going to talk to them about that." I can't remember if that was the book or the movie.
Oh, the
So
Peruvian instant darkness powder. Yeah,
yeah,
Draco uses that in the book 6.
and while they're there, Harry sneaks off because he's being heavily watched by everyone because they're very concerned about Harry. So he sneaks off and he follows Draco. He sees walking through Diagon Alley and going into Borgin and Burke's, which is in Nocturne Alley, technically. So this kind of technically happens in Nocturne Alley, but it's part of the Diagon Alley moment. Draco is talking to Borgin about he needs something fixed, and he's standing right next to the vanishing cabinet. Harry doesn't know at the time that's what he needs fixed, but they're trying to figure it out. They're listening to them through the extendable ears, and then Hermione goes in after Draco trying to figure out what he was doing, and it's a really awkward. I hate that part of the book. It's so awkward to me. I'm like, Hermione, just stay out of there.
Best
Anyway,
actress
so that
ever.
kind of wraps up book 6 in Diagon Alley. And then book 7, we don't go there till later because Harry's not going to Hogwarts that year. So the first time we see it is in chapter 26, which is Gringotts. Leading up to that, Hermione takes Polyjuice Potion to become Bellatrix. Ron face is altered, so he's also disguised. And then Harry is under the invisibility cloak with Grip Hook now on his shoulders. So they operate to the Leaky Cauldron, and once again, it's empty. Poor Tom's not getting any business, but I think he's good because people need the leaky cauldron there. I was going to read what they see. It was quiet, barely time for the shops to open. There was hardly any shoppers abroad. The crooked cobble streets, much altered from the bustling place Harry had visited before his first term at Hogwarts so many years before. More shops than ever were boarded up. Through several new establishments dedicated to the dark arts had been created since his last visit. Harry's own face glared down at him from posters plastered over many windows, always captioned with the words "Undesirable Number One." A number of ragged people sat huddled in doorways. He heard them moaning to a few passersby, pleading for gold, insisting that they were really wizards. One man had a bloody bandage over his eyes. And so as they go through and Hermione is Bellatrix, people are reacting to her. Someone like jumps up and begs her to save their children. There's just a lot going on to reflect what's going on in the world. And I should also mention when they're there in 6, all the posters and stuff are like for catching Death Eaters. Be on the lookout for these people. But now in 7, Harry's the one. But there's a lot going on. And they run into Travers, who is a Death Eater. And so that kind of starts foiling their plan. And they get into Gringotts. Hermione, as Bellatrix, demands to see her vault. They go down there. They're able to retrieve the cup, and they flee off on the dragon. And what's different in the book, apparently, is that the dragon just goes through the front doors, breaks through the front doors of Gringotts, and does not fly up through the roof, which is like a signature part of the movie and of the amusement park. So I thought that was interesting.
Speaking of the amusement
That
park,
was one of the coolest scenes, though, of all the
It
books,
is.
was when they
Yeah,
get the
good
dragon
change.
and they bust out into Diagon Alley and everybody's just running for the hills. One thing I was going to say, though, because you were mentioning, Jamie, that like Diagon Alley is kind of this microcosm of everything else happening in the Wizarding world. And that's one of the cool things about just this whole concept of the Statute of Secrecy, is that Rowling's able to use it as this way to like keep things hidden, but also keep things concentrated, right? So instead of seeing the Death Eaters all over the place, like all of this, the things that are going terrible are all concentrated in Diagon Alley, and so you're able to get like this real sense of the rest of the world, how everyone's feeling, because out there on Charing Cross Road, for example, you're not going to see any undesirable number ones posters or anything like that. And so having this place where everyone goes means that's where they get to go to intimidate everybody and make them feel like garbage. And it works pretty well, it sounds like.
And it's also, you see all these desperate people who are like,
or
where else are they going to go beg
poor
for help?
and they have nowhere else to go, and they're like, I am a wizard. People who have lost their only way of functioning in the real world, their wand, because they've been accused of not really being a wizard. So sad to see like this beautiful magical place. We were literally just talking about how exciting it was to see, and like how sad and dreary and scary it is now.
We didn't really talk about that when we talked about wands, but just like how integral a part of their lives it would become, right? Imagine losing your wand. It's like, I don't know how to wash clothes without a wand. I don't know how to get from one place to another without a wand. It's almost like when you lose your cell phone and you're like, shoot, how do I pay for stuff? How do I get home? How do like it's all in there.
How do I
and
think?
So their wands are such an important part of everything they do. So taking away their wand is really crippling.
And this is why African wizards have it down. The fact that these guys could thrive in the Muggle world until things get fixed, and yet they tremble. All right. In the real world, Diagon Alley has been built. On December 6, 2011, Universal Parks and Resorts confirmed expansion plans, but didn't reveal details. The announcement was just made 4 days after Universal revealed plans to permanently remove the Jaws attraction. So this was a little controversial because Jaws is quite Steven Spielberg was a big part of helping this park come to life, and he makes a ton of money off of it still. But this is kind of like this big deal that they're taking out this classic, maybe outdated attraction. And then on May 8th, 2013, so almost 2 years later, year and a half later, officials confirmed the expansion would be set predominantly in Universal Studios Park and would feature areas themed after Diagon Alley and London. And the expansion opened in 2014. And so if you care about theme parks, which we've talked about before, if you want to go back and listen, the Hogsmeade literally changed the paradigm and made Universal much more in the Disney category than, say, the Six Flags category. It really stepped it into this whole new world in the stratosphere. And today we're still seeing them reap those benefits, and they've opened a third gate and they're competing. It kind of changed the game. And I think Diagon Alley is even better. They gave it more space, more shops. I wish there was a second attraction, We'll get to that in a second, but I honestly think walking into this place is pretty mind-blowing. Like, I took my wife in there and I filmed her first reaction along with my friend Tim, who loves the movies, and they were kind of in awe. They do kind of recreate the open brick and going through. It is jaw-dropping. It is really beautiful, and there's so much kinetic energy in this place. And yeah, it's still pretty crowded, but there's a lot more space than the other one. The shops have more space. It is really beautiful experience to walk into Diagon Alley. And I mean, Hogsmeade's great, and but I think this even increased it, and I would put it up there with Avatar and Galaxy's Edge, the Star Wars bit, as like the best. And I haven't been to Epic Universe yet, but this has to be up there with the best themed lands in the world as far as being immersed in something. And the Wizarding Paris that's in Epic is kind of like a Diagon Alley for France, but it's a lot less magical, even though it's supposed to be a magical area. Anyway, I digress. Let's just to give you a little rundown of what you can find in there. You have Harry Potter and the Escape from Gringotts, which is like a roller coaster / 3D dark ride. And that is the only ride, unfortunately, unless you count getting on the Hogwarts Express, which is kind of like a show, and you can go from park to park, from Hogsmeade to Diagon Alley and back, which is really cool. They have a couple shows. So the night bus, they do a little show, and you can meet the driver. Celestina Warbuck and the Banshees perform, and then you can do the Ollivanders experience. Pete Guys come out and perform the Tales of Beedle the Bard. And then store-wise, let's talk food first. The ice cream parlor was made, and I did pay for the giant glass with like the peanut butter and raspberry ice cream, and it was pretty good considering. And then the Leaky Cauldron is a big restaurant. You can really reenact. It looks like it does in Half-Blood Prince, and you can, we've sat there and had a meal with our family, which is a pretty cool feeling. Text me if you want to know what to order and not order there. I will give you some good advice. But yeah, they have all these storefronts that are moving and things are going on, but then there's a lot of places you can go in. You can go in and exchange your muggle money for wizard money. Yeah, so you can pay for fake money. And then Madame Malkin's robes, the apothecary. You actually have a ton of animals and stuff in the menagerie. Of course, going into Weasley's Wizard Wheezes is really cool. And the outside, there's a lot. I think they could have gone even bigger with it, but it is a really fun area. And yeah, there's just more places you can go in, or like you see the sign for the Daily Prophet. You have Wiseacre's wizarding equipment, Sugar Plum Sweet Shop. There's a photographer studio. Like, I don't know. There's so much more interactivity than Hogsmeade, in my opinion, and it is a really cool area. But I will stop gushing. What have you guys felt in your experiences? I have some criticisms of the ride. I think I wish it was a little more roller coaster, and it's a little short, but it's very cool. What do you guys feel about this place brought to life?
I mean, they get huge points for just making it so immersive, right? Like, you come in, and I know it's open to the sky for the most part, but just like you enter literally another world, and you're very much surrounded by all of these different, wizarding shops um and and people and objects and animals, and it's really incredible. I'd
And
say
you
the same
can't
thing for
see
Gringotts.
the outside world at all. And they
Right.
actually
Yeah,
do make
there's
the
no
facade of King's Cross in London, and then Grimmauld Place, and then they have a fountain, and they have so there's a little bit of London on the outside, and then you go in and you would not know, where you are.
Yeah, it's not like other parks where, like, if you look over there, you can see that tower ride that's really tall, right? That you can, so you're still in a park. It's very like the buildings around you are actually quite high, and so while you can see the sky, you cannot see anything else around. And so it's just super immersive. Gringotts is really cool because just it's one of those where the line is almost better than the ride, because I do enjoy the ride, but like Mitchell said, it's pretty short. And but you go through, you go through the lobby of Gringotts, which feels so cool. I remember the first time I was in there, I just couldn't take enough pictures. And then you go down into like this dungeon area, and it really feels grimy. And I think they have like sound of water pinging and everything, or dripping. And that's where you were able to get on the ride, kind of underneath Gringotts, down in the caverns and everything that we know are down there. It's fun. It's a really cool place to go. I wish I could just. There are times we've gone and just like hung out in there for probably far too long, actually.
I sit there and I pretend that I live there.
Well, you pay a lot of money into the park, right? So it's like, I want to try
Might
and
as
do
well.
everything, and then you get there and you're like, I just want to stay here. Screw the rest.
Just
You're right. The bits of theming, like I know they created the whole ministry for Epic Universe, and you can kind of see that the studio tour, which maybe we'll do that next. But the scale of Gringotts, you feel like you're in this wizarding bank, and then you go downstairs and you see the offices of the Gringotts people and everything. The detail of the theming is immaculate, and yeah, just to sit in Leaky Cauldron, even though it's that's not very accurate, but they needed a big restaurant. It's fine.
It's
It is really
huge.
exciting, and again, it is based off the movie, but it brings the magic of the book. It feels like you are being transported to this place.
Well, and it's like, although I hope they do something different with the show, and it's not how I imagine it, I do think the production design of the movie is pretty
Yeah.
cool. So it's the one time in the Harry Potter world where I'm like, okay, if you only are a movie watcher, you only seen the movie, it's still pretty cool. Cause like you said, even like when Hannah walked in there, it's just so immersive and you feel like you're in a different place. You feel like you're in that world. And it feels like you're stepping into a movie, which is amazing. And both with Hogwarts on the other side and Gringotts, the queues are so cool, like Steven talked about with Gringotts. The last time, it's been a long time since I've ridden Gringotts because the line is always so long because that's all that's there. But
Yeah.
kids went off to do something else, so I did the single rider line, and I just did it by myself. And both my kids are actually tall enough to ride that ride, which I didn't realize till I went to go do that. But it is a really cool ride, and it's cool to see at least once. So check it out.
And I like that they took a swing. Like it's a blend of, it's kind of like the Mario Kart ride, which I haven't ridden yet, but I've seen a billion things. Like at least they took a swing to try and make something feel really immersive and
Better than the Mario Kart ride.
well, I know I'm saying like both of them are trying something, even if
Yeah. Both have
and
cool
yeah.
cues too.
Whereas this one, it could have had more roller coaster along with the scenes, which are kind of more like the Spider-Man Transformers type ride. I digress. It is really cool. Go on.
Also, just the general fanfare around it, like you're walking around and you feel like you're there also because people are wearing robes and everyone's
yeah.
doing the interactive things with their wands. So it is kind of cool because it's like this communal, no matter the degrees of how much you love Harry Potter, whatever, like everyone's into it. And you kind of just feel like you could be in the wizarding world, even though you're just a bunch of a sweaty tourist trying to go through a bunch of strollers to get places.
It's always funner to nerd out together than
Yeah.
being alone.
And there's like a couple extra like sidebars and stuff. Like there's just space where you
Yeah.
can spend time,
You can
and there's
hang
like
there.
the sides of Gringotts. Anyway, it is a very fun place to spend time. There's been rumors that they might bring this to Hollywood, and I think that would be okay as long as they added a different attraction. I'd like to see something new. And now that we know we're getting probably getting Harry Potter in the Britain Universal, I really wonder what they're going to do to differentiate it from the
They
rest.
have to.
Make it like the show.
Maybe it'll be the
Well,
first one that's
oh.
got the whatever production design from the TV series
Yeah.
instead of the movie.
Well, if there's anything in the TV series, I wouldn't mind if they kept some of it and tweaked it, maybe made it a little bit more chaotic or whatever, make it. But I think it's going to be fine. It's something that I think, yeah, they can't screw this up, can they? That would be pretty bad.
Well, while we're on the theme park topic, though, first the two things. So one is that there's just a big parking lot like behind where the Magical Menagerie is. So people have often talked about that they could have a second ride over there. Problem being is it's really close to Gringotts. You'd have this bottleneck to get to the two rides, but there's room to add some shows, so they should get on that. But there's also been a lot of rumors about the Lost Continent and Islands of Adventure is kind of being dismantled, and it's right next to Hogsmeade and all that. So I think there's a decent chance that Harry Potter gets expanded over there, which would be awesome.
I wonder because everyone's talking about, Zelda, Wicked, Lord of the Rings, Pokemon, and we think Lost Continent and Simpsons are both probably going to go. But there's 3 expansion pads at Epic Universe, and then there's these parking lots outside the other 2 where it's like, let's keep pushing out. Let's keep expanding.
Yeah, those employees can park anywhere. Get the parking lot out of there.
Get on the bus.
The other place where you can visit a somewhat similar Diagon Alley is the Harry Potter Studio Tour here up in Watford. And Jamie and I were lucky enough to go there in 2017.
Long ago.
Anyway, Jamie,
Man,
what did
you're old.
what did you feel about being there? Because obviously from just a filmmaking perspective as well, it's kind of cool how they make it look when it's in this giant warehouse.
Yeah. It is cool because it's much more of like the actual sets, like pieces from the actual sets and what you see in the movie, which they do mimic a lot in the parks, but this is like scaled down a bit because of that also. So it feels like almost like a miniature little alley you're walking through. Mitchell's been more recently than I, but from what I just looked at on the internet on YouTube to refresh my memory, I do have some cute pictures of me and my sister in there. I don't think me and you have one on Diagon Alley. We have one on the bridge, maybe. I think you took the photo, if that makes you feel better. So if you go to the studio tour, overall, it's a walkthrough exhibit in Leavesdale Studios, where the former set was, and now part of the set currently. So there's props and costumes and all that. What it says on the website is visitors can discover an up close broomstick at quality Quidditch supplies, Hogwarts robes at Madame Milkin's, and even the baby pygmy puffs at the Magical Menagerie. In the 3-story explosion of orange in the deserted Diagon Alley, the Weasley twins sold everything from extendable ears to fireworks in the Weasley's Wizard Wheezes shop. The 120 individually designed products reflected Fred and George's mischievous sense of humor, designed to look like an 18th century shop. The Weasley storefront took more than 3 months to build, and much of that time was spent constructing the 20-foot mannequin above the main entrance, which is cool to see. And it's cool to see that in the movie as well. But visitors will see piles of dusty wand boxes outside of Ollivanders' shop where Harry got his wand. During filming, the shop was home to more than 17,000 wand boxes, each individually labeled. So you only see like pieces of that. But it's pretty cool. And it's actually towards the end of the tour. So I don't know. I guess it's a big secret. The last thing you see on the tour, but it's right before the last thing you see on the tour. They're always like, you're going to turn this corner. And
It's very cool. And I've been in there when it's been like fairly empty and you're like,
yeah,
kind of feels like you're down the road, and there's a green screen at the end. And I think that's it. Like for a studio tour, you want to see that because you want to like, okay, how are they giving this atmosphere and making this feel? And you can see the lighting rigs above and everything.
it's super cool. And when we went, people say it can get pretty busy in there because it is kind of tight. It's not huge. But when we went, I felt like we had plenty of space, and we hung out there a little bit and looked around, and it's just fun. And again, obviously, that's heavily based off the movies. Those are the movies, so
Yeah.
it's their
And I think
interpretation.
some of those props and buildings and elements were actually, the actors were walking along those same fake
Yep.
cobblestones. I think it's something that they did very well, and let's hope that they do it well again. So we've kind of covered this to some degree as we've seen Harry go through it. But Steve, what do you think Diagon Alley means to Harry? And then by extension, what is it going to represent, and how should it best, play a role in the TV show?
Yeah, no, I think we did talk about a lot of these things, but I think it is really Harry's first kind of immersion into the magical world. So it's interesting because we know that he didn't actually even go to London before, even though not that far from Surrey apparently. But when his first trip to London, he gets to see, London. Maybe he saw Big Ben, I don't know, but that's what the rest of us saw. He just went to Diagon Alley. And so it's really interesting that he just entered into this completely different world, right? And you got to just think about him being oppressed by the Dursleys, right? He hadn't even seen much of the Muggle world, and yet here he is getting into this whole other magical realm. And it really just kind of threw the contrast between oppressed, like, beaten down Harry, who's not allowed to do anything really, and doesn't even get his own clothes. But then in the magical world, he's got money, he's got talent, right? He's got all this potential. And so I think that Diagon Alley really represents that well. The interesting thing I think comes later on in the series, as we talked about also, is that Diagon Alley becomes, as the world kind of gets more complicated and he gets older, it stops being such a like fun, carefree, magical place. Like, of course, when he goes there in the Prisoner of Azkaban, it's probably the happiest summer of his life, right? But by the time he goes back there in book 6, it is a dark and kind of scary place. There's lots of stuff boarded up already. And then in book 7, it, like the rest of the Wizarding world, kind of is turned against him, right? Everyone there would probably turn him in pretty quickly if they got the chance. And so it becomes this reflection of the world and of how serious and almost like mature I think that everything's become, even Harry himself, right? He's no longer just trying to make his way in the magical world, like he's actually hunting down Voldemort. And so it creates a very different dynamic, and Diagon Alley really reflects that really well. And that's part of why we love it. So there's a lot of symbolism in Diagon Alley, but it's also just a fun place to go get some ice cream and watch the dragon blow fire all over it.
Oh yeah, that's important. So yeah, I think we talked about book 3. Like, it'd be nice to maybe spend a chunk of an episode here. At least give us a big opening sequence where Harry runs into a friend and spends the day with them. I don't know. Is there anything else missing from the books that we like really need to see, or Is there something that could be expanded upon here at Diagon Alley in the TV show?
Missing from the books or missing from the movies?
Sorry, missing from the movies.
Okay, I was like, what are we gonna add here? Sorry, Steven, go ahead.
Or both. No, I think so much of it is just like getting immersed in the world, right? So yeah, we didn't get that much in the movies. There could be a lot more of that, but I think this is our opportunity as well, especially in the earlier seasons of the show, because at Hogwarts you're inside of the school, right? There's a bunch of kids around. It's very much focused on learning and the shenanigans that kids get up to, but like seeing like what the adults do and what's important to them, and what are the different I wouldn't quite call them creatures, but beings out there, because you got the goblins and you've got the hags and you've got the elves, all these other beings that could be there. Diagon Alley really is the place where I think it's a good to be able to kind of show that to the audience, of that it's so much more diverse and fun than just kids in witches hats and jeans, which is what you get inside of Hogwarts.
And you can plant so many things there. Like, there was a book that kind of talked about a vampire or something that Harry saw. My daughter was like, vampires? And I was like, oh yeah, there's a vampire layer in the books. But I mean, really like one page of vampire. But it is kind of like a way to like plant things. And I hope, just how we want the layout of Hogwarts to be established, series 1, I feel like I don't want to just see the shops that are mentioned in the book, because even in the book some are like, oh, they popped in here and here, and then they like, we don't spend a lot of time even in the books in certain places. And so I hope we actually do those pop-ins and see, like, we see the bookshop, we see different things, but also establish that layout, and don't all of a sudden have the order change in 3 books when it's like, oh, this shop is supposed to be somewhere around here, so we need to throw that in. Look at everything, read every time you see Diagon Alley, and get the layout the best they can, because we don't even know the layout, but just establish that. Give us the consistency.
Give us a good map to go off of. I want to be able to Google a map, dang it.
Have Tom look the same and not be like Hunchback of Notre Dame, and then later on he's not at all, Or what was that? No, in the beginning he looked kind of normal, and then in movie 3 he was like
Or like, is that Tom?
Three.
I don't know.
Tom had a rough 2 years, you guys. He lost all his hair.
Got hit by a bus.
Well, that is Diagon Alley, which runs horizontally through London. Go visit it. The real world locations, if you can. They're fantastic. And what a magical place. We'll continue to explore magical characters and places and things. Next time, we will be talking about all things broomsticks and Quidditch, which is going to be exciting because it is the #1 stupidly designed sport in the world. Thanks for joining us. Please come along next week. Jamie, send us out.
Peace out, snitches.